The wheelchair's rusty wheels squeaked against the cracked sidewalk as Eleanor Watson pushed herself slowly down Maple Street, her arthritis-gnarled hands gripping the worn handles with determination that belied her 83 years. Every Sunday morning for the past 6 months, she had made this same challenging journey to St. Mark's Community Church, a trek that had become increasingly difficult since her hip surgery left her dependent on the old wheelchair her late husband Harold had used during his final years. What passers-by couldn't see was that this wasn't just a trip to church for Eleanor, it was her lifeline to hope, her weekly reminder that even in her loneliness and physical pain, she was still part of something larger than herself. Eleanor's story was one of quiet resilience in the face of overwhelming loss. After Harold's death 2 years ago, she had discovered that their modest savings had been depleted by his medical expenses, leaving her with just enough to maintain their small house and cover basic necessities. Her only child, a son named Robert, lived across the country in California with his own family, and while he called regularly, the physical distance meant Eleanor faced each day largely alone. The church had become her sanctuary, not just spiritually but socially, providing the human connection she desperately craved and the sense of purpose that comes from being part of a caring community. The challenge was getting there. St. Mark's was 8 blocks from Eleanor's house, a distance that wouldn't have been difficult when she was younger but now felt like a marathon in her deteriorating wheelchair. The sidewalks were uneven, with cracks and roots that made navigation treacherous, and there were several steep hills that left her exhausted and sometimes unable to make it up without stopping multiple times to catch her breath. On rainy or icy days, the journey was impossible, leaving Eleanor to watch the church service online, though it wasn't the same as being surrounded by her church family. On this particular Sunday morning in early October, Eleanor had started her journey later than usual after struggling to transfer from her bed to the wheelchair, a process that was becoming more difficult as her strength waned. The autumn air was crisp, and the leaves were beginning to change colors, painting the neighborhood in brilliant reds and golds that reminded her of the many falls she and Harold had enjoyed together. But as she approached the steepest hill on her route, Eleanor realized she was facing her greatest challenge yet. The hill on Elm Street had always been the most difficult part of her journey, but today something was different. The wheels of her wheelchair felt stiffer than usual, and her arms ached from the effort of propelling herself forward. Halfway up the incline, Eleanor found herself completely stopped, unable to generate enough momentum to continue. Cars passed by without slowing, their drivers either not noticing her struggle or uncertain about how to help. Eleanor sat there for several minutes, breathing heavily and fighting back tears of frustration and embarrassment. That's when 12-year-old Tyler Mitchell came riding up on his bicycle, returning from his paper route that he had taken on to earn money for a new video game console. Tyler was a typical 7th grader, more interested in basketball and friends than in the adult world around him, but something about the elderly woman sitting motionless on the hill made him slow down and take notice. He could see the strain on her face and the way her hands trembled as she gripped the wheelchair handles, and despite his young age, Tyler understood that she was in trouble. Without hesitation, Tyler jumped off his bike and approached Eleanor with the natural friendliness that hadn't yet been dulled by teenage self-consciousness. He introduced himself and asked if she needed help, his genuine concern evident in his voice. Eleanor was initially hesitant to accept assistance from someone so young, worried that he might get hurt trying to push her wheelchair up the steep hill. But Tyler's confidence and determination, combined with her own desperate need for help, convinced her to accept his offer. What happened next revealed something beautiful about Tyler's character. Instead of simply pushing the wheelchair up the hill and leaving, he asked Eleanor where she was going and why it was important to her. As they slowly made their way up the incline, with Tyler providing the extra strength needed to overcome the steep grade, Eleanor found herself sharing her story with this young stranger. She told him about Harold, about her struggles with loneliness, and about how much the church meant to her as her primary source of community and spiritual comfort. Tyler listened with remarkable maturity for a 12-year-old, asking thoughtful questions and expressing genuine empathy for Eleanor's situation. By the time they reached the top of the hill, something special had developed between them. Tyler had discovered that helping someone else felt better than any video game or material possession he had ever wanted, while Eleanor had found an unexpected friend who reminded her that kindness existed in the world, even from the most unexpected sources. When they arrived at St. Mark's Community Church, Tyler was amazed by the warmth with which Eleanor was greeted by the congregation. It was clear that she was loved and valued by her church family, and Tyler began to understand just how important this weekly journey was to her well-being. Pastor Williams, a kind man in his 50s who had known Eleanor and Harold for decades, welcomed Tyler warmly and invited him to stay for the service. Though Tyler had never been particularly religious, something about the sense of community and acceptance he felt made him decide to stay. During the service, Tyler found himself moved by the messages of love, compassion, and service to others that formed the core of Pastor Williams's sermon. The pastor spoke about how small acts of kindness could ripple outward in ways we never imagine, touching lives and creating positive change in communities. As Tyler sat next to Eleanor, he realized that his simple decision to help a stranger up a hill had already changed something inside him, giving him a sense of purpose and connection he had never experienced before. After the service, Eleanor introduced Tyler to various members of the congregation, each of whom had their own story of struggle and resilience. Tyler met Mrs. Henderson, who had been caring for her husband with Alzheimer's disease for 8 years, and Mr. Rodriguez, who had started a food pantry after losing his job and experiencing homelessness himself. He began to understand that the church was more than just a building where people gathered on Sundays. It was a support network that helped people navigate life's challenges with dignity and hope. The connection Tyler felt to Eleanor and her church family led to a decision that would change both their lives profoundly. He asked Eleanor if she would like him to help her get to church every Sunday, not because he felt obligated but because he genuinely wanted to be part of something meaningful. Eleanor was touched by his offer but concerned about imposing on his time, knowing that most 12-year-olds had better things to do than help elderly people navigate city streets. Tyler's response revealed wisdom beyond his years. He explained to Eleanor that helping her wasn't a burden but a privilege, and that their weekly journey to church had become the highlight of his week. He had discovered that the satisfaction he felt from making a real difference in someone else's life was far more rewarding than any of his previous hobbies or interests. More than that, he had found a mentor in Eleanor, whose stories of her marriage to Harold and her approach to facing adversity with grace had taught him valuable lessons about resilience and character. Their weekly routine became a source of joy and anticipation for both Tyler and Eleanor. Every Sunday morning, Tyler would arrive at Eleanor's house 30 minutes before they needed to leave, giving them time to chat and prepare for the journey together. He had learned to anticipate the challenging parts of the route and had even researched alternative paths that were easier for wheelchair navigation. Eleanor, meanwhile, had begun looking forward to Sundays not just for the church service but for the time she spent with Tyler, who had brought youthful energy and optimism back into her life. The transformation in both their lives became evident to everyone who knew them. Tyler's parents, initially concerned about their son's new commitment to helping an elderly neighbor, were amazed by the positive changes they saw in their child. He had become more responsible, more empathetic, and more interested in contributing to his community rather than just consuming entertainment and material possessions. His grades improved as he developed better time management skills, and he began volunteering for other community service projects inspired by his experience with Eleanor. Eleanor's change was even more dramatic. The weekly companionship and sense of being needed had revitalized her spirit in ways that surprised even her doctor. Her physical health improved as she found new motivation to take care of herself, and her mental health flourished as her social isolation decreased. The church congregation noticed that Eleanor seemed happier and more energetic, often arriving for services with stories about Tyler's latest accomplishments or funny observations about life. The miracle that truly restored faith, however, came 6 months after Tyler and Eleanor first met. Eleanor's son Robert, who had been planning to move her to a nursing facility because he was worried about her living alone, visited for Thanksgiving and was amazed by the transformation he saw in his mother. Not only was she physically stronger and mentally sharper, but she had developed a relationship with Tyler and his family that provided the social support and security Robert had been so concerned about. Even more miraculous was the ripple effect their friendship had created throughout the community. Tyler's friends, initially skeptical about his commitment to helping Eleanor, had gradually become involved in the church's community service projects. Several other elderly members of the congregation who had been struggling with transportation found themselves with young volunteers willing to help. The intergenerational connections that formed had enriched both the older and younger members of the community in ways that surprised everyone involved. Pastor Williams, recognizing the powerful example Tyler and Eleanor had set, began incorporating their story into his sermons about service and community. Their friendship had demonstrated that meaningful relationships could form across generational lines when people approached each other with openness and genuine care. The church started a formal program pairing elderly members with young volunteers, creating a network of support that addressed practical needs while building lasting friendships. Tyler's simple act of stopping to help an elderly woman up a hill had created a cascade of positive changes that touched dozens of lives in their community. Eleanor had regained her independence and sense of purpose, Tyler had discovered his passion for service to others, and their church had developed new ways of connecting generations and supporting vulnerable members. The miracle wasn't supernatural but profoundly human, the power of compassion to transform lives and create lasting positive change. A year after their first meeting, Tyler and Eleanor were invited to speak at a regional conference about intergenerational friendship and community service. Standing at the podium together, Eleanor in her wheelchair and Tyler beside her, they shared their story with an audience of social workers, religious leaders, and community organizers. Eleanor spoke about how Tyler's kindness had saved her not just from being stranded on a hill, but from the isolation and despair that had been consuming her life. Tyler, now 13 and more confident than ever, talked about how helping Eleanor had taught him that real happiness came not from getting things for yourself but from making a difference in other people's lives. He encouraged other young people to look for opportunities to help in their communities, emphasizing that age didn't matter when it came to making a positive impact. Their presentation received a standing ovation, but more importantly, it inspired dozens of similar programs in communities across their state. The bond between Tyler and Eleanor continued to grow stronger as they navigated life's challenges together. When Tyler faced difficulties at school, Eleanor provided wisdom and encouragement drawn from her 8 decades of experience. When Eleanor's arthritis flared up or she felt discouraged about her physical limitations, Tyler's youthful optimism and practical help reminded her that she was valued and capable of contributing to her community. Their story became a testament to the power of intergenerational relationships and the profound impact that simple acts of kindness can have on both the giver and receiver. Tyler had learned that heroism didn't require superpowers or grand gestures, sometimes it just meant noticing when someone needed help and being willing to provide it. Eleanor had discovered that age and physical limitations didn't diminish her worth or her ability to mentor and inspire younger generations. The miracle that followed Tyler's decision to help Eleanor reach church wasn't a single dramatic event but a series of small, beautiful changes that transformed both their lives and their entire community. It demonstrated that faith isn't just about religious belief but about faith in the goodness of people and the power of human connection to overcome isolation and despair. Their friendship proved that miracles happen every day when people choose compassion over indifference and service over self-interest. This story reminds us that each of us has the power to create miracles in the lives of people around us. We don't need special abilities or resources, we just need to notice when someone is struggling and choose to help rather than pass by. Tyler's story shows that young people have enormous capacity for compassion and service when given the opportunity, while Eleanor's story reminds us that everyone has wisdom and love to offer regardless of age or circumstances. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories for more inspiring tales of ordinary people creating extraordinary change through simple acts of compassion. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that miracles happen when we choose to care for each other, and that the smallest gesture of kindness can transform lives in ways we never imagined. Together, we can build communities where everyone is valued and no one faces their challenges alone.